Hi buddies! Welcome to Emergency Pineapple Studios, where I talk about things that I love and you might too. Today I'm going to talk about D&D, which is a hobby I have loved for 20 years, and I'm hoping to pass that on to other people. Considering that D&D has been around for a little while, there are a lot of people who really want to try it, but don't know how to get into it, and they don't know what they're doing, especially. So today's video is 10 pieces of advice for those new potential players. Keep in mind that most of these pieces of advice are in no particular order other than the fact that the first one is the most important. The other 9 are about equally important. So, with that being said, let's dive right in. Number 1. Read the player's handbook. Please, I beg of you, at least read through it once. You'd think I wouldn't have to say this, but no, there are so many people who just don't open this book and read it. Even doing a cursory read gives you ideas for what your character is, your character concept, what they can do, but more importantly, it allows you to come up with the right questions to bring to your DM upon your character creation. To say, hey, did I do this right? My understanding is this, this, and this. Or to say, hey, I understood this aspect of the character creation, but I didn't quite understand how this worked. Could you elaborate? Just by reading the book answers so many questions. That's why this is advice number 1, is just open the book and read it through once. You don't have to remember everything about the book, but generally get the basic ideas of every chapter, so that way when you sit down and go to play for the first time, you have generic ideas, and then things that you're still unsure about can at least get answered. Number 2, start with an experienced DM. If you are a new player and you're either trying to join a new campaign, or you're an entire new group of friends trying to start a campaign, rather than finding an inexperienced person to be the DM, it would probably be better to just find an experienced DM. I'm sure there's someone you know who has done it before and would be willing to do it for you and your friends. But if you don't know a person, I would still recommend hiring a DM. And the reason I give for this, actually there are 3 reasons I would give for having a more experienced DM. The first one is, more experienced DMs know how to read the room and players, so therefore they can get a good dynamic of how things are going to go, and they'll have smoother gameplay when doing so. Second, a more experienced DM is going to be able to answer the questions that you have in a much more concrete way than a new DM will. Because a new DM is going to have to go look up the rules, whereas an experienced DM, they've done it before, they kind of know most of the basic questions, and even some of the more complex ones that they have an answer for. And because everyone has a different DM style, you're going to run into new, different experiences. And a more experienced one will have a more smooth gameplay. The third and final reason is that experienced DMs can improv better. I can tell you right now, every group of characters and every group of players is going to go off the main storyline at least once or twice. And so DMs who have been doing it before can improv a lot faster. They have ideas ready to help people guide on a little side quest before going back to the main quest. It's just a lot more of a clean and fun experience when you do this. So that's my recommendation, is get a more experienced DM. Number 3, attend a session 0. For those of you who are unaware of this term, a session 0 is a point in time that you would get the entire players and DM to meet each other, to introduce characters, their race, class, and a little bit of their backstory, while also going over the boundaries and rules of what's going to happen. The reason why I definitely recommend this for new players is because since you are new, and if you're going to have questions, this is the time to do it. This also gives you an understanding of how the game's going to work. So sometimes the session 0 starts off the campaign, sometimes it's just to establish what's going to happen over the course of the campaign. And I'm going to go into more detail about how a session 0 works and what you should do for it in a future video, but just know this for new players, attend one of these if your DM offers one, because it is the place to ask questions. Number 4, don't jump in mid-chapter. Most DMs actually would give the advice of don't jump in mid-campaign for new players. And normally, I'd actually agree with that. However, because I'm a story guy, I also know that sometimes certain characters don't arrive until midway through the book, or midway through the movie or show, whatever you're doing. And since D&D is supposed to just be like an interactive role-playing game, they have certain chapters. And sometimes you can introduce people in the middle of the story. My recommendation is, if you are jumping into the middle of a campaign, don't jump in the middle of a current chapter. Always jump in when the rest of the group has set a point in time. They've just finished whatever like mission they are doing, and now they have some downtime, because that gives your character the ability to build rapport or like maybe a backstory connection with the other players, so that you can kind of smooth your character into it, and you're not jumping in to just an immediate amount of chaos. You're jumping in at a time of rest. However, I will say, best case scenario, don't jump in mid-campaign. Worst case scenario, don't jump in mid-chapter. Number 5, fleshed out your character concept. Alright, let's be real. The character sheet can be very overwhelming for new players. So, my recommendation is come up with a character concept, and if you trust your DM and they are okay with it, have them fill out the character sheet as best they can based on your character concept. Now, for a character concept, you need to know things like their family, their friends, background, training, what their race is, how they fit into the world, and what their goals are. It does not need to be the size of a novel. In fact, for each of those points, you can have maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and it should be fine. And that should give enough information for your DM to help you craft the character sheet in a not only balanced manner, powerful manner, but a creative manner. This will also help with the DM creating story beats for your character. Story beats that would normally be something they make up on the fly. Now, if they have like concepts and things to understand, now they can actually create cool, unique areas for you to explore and for you to kind of see what your character does in certain situations, and makes the gameplay not only smoother, but a lot more fun and creative. But because new players have a hard time and get overwhelmed by the character sheet, they kind of don't want to do it. So by allowing your DM to help you out with it, or even sometimes doing it the first time, it makes it a lot more fun, and it gives you a faster, more genuine experience in the game. Number 6, understand the theme of your campaign. Alright, so not every campaign is the same. In fact, there are quite a few differences between campaign to campaign. Now imagine you've made a character that's designed for like an epic medieval fantasy like Lord of the Rings or Skyrim. But instead, the theme of your campaign is steampunk Victorian London. Your character does not fit the world that they're meant to be in. Now, sometimes that can be kind of an interesting concept, but most of the time that doesn't actually fit for the vibe that the rest of the campaign is going for. Make sure that when you are developing your character, it's developed in a way that would actually fit the world that it's going into. Now, you don't have to necessarily worry about balance at that point in time, because story beats balance every time. So, make sure you know what kind of campaign you're jumping into and what the general theme of it is before you craft the character. Number 7, don't join a large group. I don't think I could stress this one enough for new players. A large group are beasts even for experienced players and DMs. A lot of your more unique qualities are going to be lost just due to the bulk of people. On top of that, the gameplay is going to be stalled because there's so many people to keep track of. There's so many ideas and so many concepts that sometimes they have to just use initiative just to get through everyone's choice of background information. I'm going to tell you right now, this does not mean large groups are bad. I just do not recommend it if you are going to be a new player. Do not join a group that has any more than 5 players and the DM. 5 is still kind of pushing it. I would recommend somewhere around 3 or 4. That way you can still have like a unique group setting and a nice balance of party, but at the same time not getting lost amongst the other players. So I say this with love. For new players, do not join a large group, please. Number 8, separate player from character. This one's kind of a 2-parter, so make sure you understand this. The first part is when new players make their own characters, they kind of get like a strange attachment to them, because it's either like an extension of themselves or it's kind of like their child. So if anything bad happens to them, they kind of internalize it. Make sure that when you're playing that you and your character are separate entities. That way, if something bad happens to it, you don't hold a grudge, or you don't get too upset, or it doesn't like affect the rest of your week. It is a game. You and the character are not the same person. Sometimes bad things happen to the characters. It's okay. Again, just a game. It's part of the experience. Everyone's been through it. The second part is recognizing that your fellow players are not their characters. Sometimes other players play their characters in such a way that might annoy you, the player, or might annoy your character, and you kind of project that onto the player. They are also most of the time just playing a character, so do not assume that the player and the character are one and the same. Now, sometimes they are. This isn't to say that there aren't troublesome players or troublesome characters. There are. Just make sure that when you are annoyed or you're like upset about something, you're annoyed at the right person. Are you annoyed as the character with the character, as a player with the player, or as a player with the character? Make sure you understand the difference, because a lot of times new players have issues distinguishing this fact, and I genuinely think it will help your gameplay if you are able to make those separations. Number 9. Know either your DM or all other players. This is a very situational piece of advice, but I still think it's important. If you're going into a campaign with a whole bunch of strangers, or there's going to be a stranger involved with it, either know the entire rest of the group or know the DM. If it's you and your friends trying out D&D for the first time, make sure all of you know each other and the stranger is the DM who's the experienced DM, if you remember back to advice number 2. This way that you know your friends, and so when your DM's trying to figure out the dynamic of the group, you guys are able to explain your group dynamic and they can run a more fun, unique, smooth campaign for you guys, and you'll have a better experience. On the other hand, if you're joining almost like an entire group of complete strangers, make sure the person you know is the DM, because this is the person who actually makes all the decisions. And on top of that, this is the person who you can actually ask questions for and not get necessarily wrong answers. Because sometimes you join a campaign, you don't know the people, and you're a little kind of wary about how things are going to go. If this is the case for you, know the DM or know the other players. Number 10. It's supposed to be fun. D&D is a tabletop role-playing game. Emphasis on the word game. Games are supposed to be fun and enjoyable, unless they're Monopoly or Uno. In that case, all bets are off. But regardless, whether you are here to slay monsters, roleplay as someone else, tell a good story, or whatever part of D&D intrigues you the most, it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience. If you are not enjoying yourself, it's either not for you, or there is something wrong. More times than not, I have found that something was wrong with the campaign and not because D&D was not for you. So, if you're not having fun in a campaign setting, either talk to your DM, talk to your group, and if it feels like you're just in a toxic situation, leave. Find a different group. Because again, at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a fun experience. Thank you buddies for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe for more D&D content. It will come out almost every other Thursday. If you're interested in my other content, check out my other videos. Have a good day, and go have some adventures.